Okay. Uh, can you introduce yourself and where are you
Um,
from?
my name is Lakeisha Lalwani. I am from Jakarta, Indonesia, of course. Um, and I am 19 years old. Currently, I live in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I am attending Management and Science University. I'm taking dentistry. Um, it's my first year and second semester. And yeah, that's it.
Hmm.
How is how do you do in Malaysia? Like,
Um,
is it different in
Me
Jakarta?
personally, oh, there are a lot of things that are different. Maybe, for example, culture-wise, the foods, the people. Um, in Indonesia, I guess. Um, yeah, how we speak. When it comes to language, how we speak. Yes, we speak similar languages. Because Bahasa Indonesia comes from Bahasa Melayu technically. However, certain words like mobil, kereta, kasur, katil, um, other words, they might sound similar to one another, however, different usage, or maybe just two different words in general, even though they have the same meanings. Um, for me, I guess also the foods. Me personally, in my opinion, all Malaysian foods aren't as strong as Indonesian foods, flavor wise. However, there's also Indonesian foods here in Malaysia. And sometimes the chefs, the cooks, the workers are actually Indonesian immigrants. They live here in Malaysia. However, their cookings, their flavors are adapted to the Malaysian tongue. So for the Malaysians, oh, Indonesian food tastes so good, tastes so great. But for me personally, they don't taste the same as Indonesian food. For example, maybe bakso, ayam penyet, or anything Indonesian, especially their sauce, their sambal, they taste different, not as strong as Indonesian flavor. And I guess the cities, the people, the um the roads, they just feel different altogether. For example, in Malaysia, if you have important business to do, such as maybe the immigration, and or maybe you need to go to the embassy, you need to go to another location. Um, and so it isn't in the same place. Like for example, oh, I just need to go to Kuala Lumpur. No, I need to go to a specific place, maybe a different continent, or what they call negeri, because in Malaysia they use kerajaan, and since they use kerajaan, we don't say president. We say president, right? However, Malaysians, they don't say president, they say king, sultan.
I see.
Yeah. So, but the Malaysia itself, it's negara, but continents such as Kuala Lumpur, Shah Alam, Malacca, it's negeri, because each places have different sultans,
Mm.
and the one who controls the negara actually changes every 5 years. So there's no votings, because it's more of a bloodline,
I see, I
unlike
see.
in Indonesia. And the Malaysians here, usually when they mention about Malaysia, they would say Kerajaan Malaysia. So if they ever mention about Kerajaan Kerajaan Indonesia, if they talk about Indonesia, so I find that really interesting. And also a little fun fact, in Malaysia, the red and white lines at their flags actually represents all 13 of their states.
Oh,
However, three states, they don't have any sultan. So they are really, no one is controlling that area. So it's actually surprising, because in Indonesia, each place each section, oh, they have like the positions, and we are able to vote. However, in Malaysia, since it's kerajaan, um, they would have someone to control, and maybe if they get older, their kids would be the next sultan, which is prince. And yeah, that's it.
I wanna ask you some question like, what are some must-try traditional Malaysian dishes? Which is your
Um,
personal favorite?
I guess the one similar to Indonesian, yeah, Indonesian desserts would be dodol. Dodol here,
There's a doodle in Malaysia.
it's yeah, there's dodol here in Malaysia. However, it's not in like the city in where I live in, such as Kuala Lumpur. The best dodol you can find is actually at Malacca.
Mm. But
And
similar or
usually
not?
they have flavor, durian flavor. Huh?
The taste is similar or not?
For me, it's different. Personally, I usually eat my great grandmother's dodol, so I maybe get to taste it like every 2 years, 3 years, because I barely go back to my great grandma. However, here, yeah, I guess I get to eat it whenever I just feel like it. If I go to Malacca lah. Yeah, but the taste is different because here the dodol they use gula Melaka, so sugar from Melaka lah.
Do in Malaysia have like Padang restaurant?
Yes,
You know like rendang.
yes, because actually the quick history on this is that Indonesian immigrants they would travel to Malaysia and live in Malaysia, work with Malaysians. So they would slowly integrate their culture with Malaysian culture. That's why certain foods such and maybe other foods that are similar to in that are same, I guess. Yeah, it's mostly because of Indonesian immigrants living in Malaysia and then just slowly integrating their cultures. So it's similar, but it's still different. Yeah.
In Malaysian have nasi kandar, right?
Yeah.
Which
Usually
one
I
is
can
better,
get nasi
nasi
kandar
kandar
at
or nasi padang?
hmm. If I'm being honest, I go to Kedai Mama because it's much more cheaper. So I get to eat nasi kandar more often than nasi padang. So I guess I'll say nasi kandar.
Nasi kandar.
Uh,
Hmm. Wait, is it cheaper in Indonesia or in Malaysia?
Everything is cheaper in Indonesia than it is in Malaysia, if I'm being
Oh.
honest. Because in Malaysia, you can one person you can spend maybe, for example, if you go to like a mall, a restaurant, maybe you get to spend like 30 ringgit for yourself. However, if you spend 30 ringgit in Indonesia, you can actually eat for three people, unfortunately.
I wanna ask you some more question like, what challenge you face when moving from Indonesia to Malaysia?
One of the challenges is for me, yes, the food. Because I grew up and I was born in Indonesia. So automatically, I'm so used to Indonesian foods, Indonesian cultures, Indonesian snacks. However, when I moved to Malaysia, I actually dislike it here first. Just because I don't like the food. Such as mie goreng. Here in Malaysia, they do have a mie goreng company. However, it's called mie segera, not mie instant. So that's how I know the differences. And in Indomie Indonesia, we use sauce as our flavorings. However, in the Malaysian one, they use like flakes. So for me personally, yeah, it's not that good. So um I go to a certain place to buy Indonesian products. And however, before I know the place, I was actually really sad. I don't fully like it in Malaysia. Oh, because of the food, because of the people. At first, Bahasa Melayu, it sounds odd to me because how they speak, how they pronounce the words. And especially since most Malaysians they speak, not most Malaysians, some Malaysians, depending on the race. If I'm not mistaken, Kelantanese people they speak really fast. So even now, even despite like me living here in Malaysia for 5 to 6 years, I am still not able to catch the Kelantanese people because of how they speak and how and their speed lah.
Ever experience racism?
Ya Allah.
Itu apa?
Yes. I have experienced racism. Before
Hmm.
I was able to speak Bahasa Melayu, not always actually. For me personally, it's usually around the city. And yeah, but some Malaysians or maybe immigrants, because I'm a student, right? I'm a student, an international student. So of course, most of the time in college, I would have I would also have international friends. So they are outside of both Malaysia and Indonesia. Um, and some people would also look down on me for being Indonesian. Um, because like, oh, we have a stereotype where, oh, Indonesians are not as smart as Malaysians because we are not able to speak English, for example, or maybe Indonesians are poor. Yeah, so I faced the racism. However, the Malaysians that sound similarly to Indonesians are people from Sabah, for example. I actually met someone from Sabah. They were like sad because like, oh, the her Malaysian friends assumed that, oh, she was Indonesian because of her accent, because the Sabah Malaysian accent, they sound similarly to the Indonesian accent itself. And she was like, oh, she got sad because they assumed she was Indonesian. But I was kind of disappointed, like, oh, what's wrong with being Indonesian? What's wrong with being Indonesian? So what if people assume you were Indonesian? It's not like, oh, we're low. For example, me, I'm here. I'm here, I'm living, oh, okay, I'm attending college. So like, yes, I do still face racism, and especially mockery for speaking Indonesian. Um, because like once, oh yeah, I was speaking Indonesian with my friends, and then a group of people behind me were like, oh, making fun. Oh, no, 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 no. Even my friend, he is an Arabic person. He's Syrian. Oh, we went somewhere together, and then like, oh, the people behind us suddenly was like, top, Toby, top, top, Toby, top. It was funny. I have to admit it was funny, but like it's kind of racist, but it's funny. I hate to admit that actually, but yeah, we do face racism here.
I heard some people in Malaysia or some race they don't they don't speak English. Uh, they don't speak English, right? Or do they speak English but they not good? They're not. Uh,
Um,
that great English?
For me, in my opinion, it's really diverse because usually most of the people my age, our age, they are able to speak English, maybe sometimes broken English. Because in Malaysia, if you want to go to college, you should be able to speak in English because they have a minimum for their exams. Um, However, the elderly here, they're not able to speak in they not all. Some people, yeah, they're not able to speak in Bahasa. Oh wait, no. Ano? Some people here, they are not able to speak in English because the first time I live here in Malaysia, I tried to speak in English. However, I met with an elderly person. They did not understand what I was saying because I was speaking in English. But there's also some people who, um, I guess, are technically, what I assume are also immigrants because some people here they are also not able to speak in both Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa and English. I mean, so
I
which is
see.
confusing. However, that's how you know if they are immigrants because like actual people who live here, who are born here, they are able to speak in Bahasa Melayu even if it's just a bit. And also English even if it's just a bit. So depends lah.
Iki, you
Okay.
have some question?
Yes, I have some questions. Do you experience any culture shock in Malaysia?
Mm-mm, I do actually, fortunately. One of the culture shocks is that Malaysians, when they dust their beds, we use we use a broom, right? Sapulidi. We use what we call sapulidi. Malaysians, they don't. They just on their beds. You know, like, you know. So it was actually surprising. And even my Malaysian roommate, she was also surprised when I say, "Oh, this is not for floors. This is for my bed." In Indonesia, we use this. We use sapulidi, not the ones. The big ones are for the floor. However, the small ones like this, oh, this is for the beds. And of course, she was confused. She was like, "Huh?" I asked her, "Oh, what do you do?" She said, "Oh, she just hits the bed." So I was actually surprised. And also here in Malaysia, there's three races, big races, like the Melayu, the Chinese, and Indian. And also here, one of the surprises, yeah, like I said, not all of the three people here, despite Bahasa Melayu being their national language, not all not all two of these races, the Indians and the Chinese, are able to speak Bahasa Melayu. Sometimes they are able to speak a little bit of Bahasa Melayu, but are fluent in English. Sometimes they're not fluent in English, but are able to speak in Bahasa Melayu. Because I do have a classmate, she's a veterinary. I do have a friend. She's a veterinary student. She is a Chinese Malaysian, so she's able to speak in both Bahasa Melayu, English, and also in Mandarin. Because here in Malaysia, their culture, depending on their race, are really strong, are really free. Not free, I guess. It's more, yeah, mostly strong. Unlike in Indonesia, because in Indonesia, the Chindo are kind of a minority, and most of them are not able to speak Mandarin. However, they are able to speak in Bahasa Indonesia fluently, clearly, because Bahasa Indonesia is our national language. However, here, if despite being the national language, not all Malaysians are able to speak Bahasa Melayu, which is, yeah, like I said, a culture shock.
Yeah, thank you for your
Okay.
time for us.
Makasih,
Yeah.
See
Lakisha.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Lakisha.
Okay.
Oke, cut. Terus ini stop
Dah,
record
dah.
aja, dah.
Iya, stop record
Stop,
aja
stop.
ya.
Masih ada.